All right, in this video we're dealing with chapters 24 and 25 of Mounce, the third edition grammar. This is our Wednesday assignment for week 9, and so we want to walk you through this chapter so you'll be ready to deal with the translation, with the grammar, and of course be ready to translate in this for the aorist and future passive indicative. The aorist and future passive, very similar. There are some distinctions, but we'll point those out. So let's begin by calling your attention to the exegetical insight, and again ask you to read that. The overview is very helpful, as it normally is. I just want to remind you to keep looking at that. It kind of gives you an idea of where you're going. I also encourage you to read and compare the English and Greek grammar sections, because if you have both of these things in your mind firmly, it will make a difference in how much easier it is to deal with the lesson. So we're going to deal first of all with the first aorist passive, and I'm going to start out at 24.3. If you will join me there in the grammar and look at what he talks about on translation. It's very simple. It would be much better for you to simply use the translation as he suggested, that is, not using the helping verb in English, the verb have. If you do that, it's going to get you a little confused when you deal with the perfect active, which we're going to deal with a little bit later. So note that, if you will, and then note how the first aorist passive is formed, and you will see that it is formed with the augment and the regular present stem in the example of luo, and then the formative for the aorist passive, which is theta eta. This theta eta makes it very simple to recognize the aorist passive. When you put the augment together with the theta eta, then you can easily recognize these. And then you have the secondary endings, and you can see how that is secondary active endings. You see how all of that is put together. So I want you to learn the paradigms for the first aorist and the second aorist as he gives it to you here. So be sure to note that as you look at first and second aorist, and 24.5 is first aorist passive, and then 24.12 is the second aorist passive, and you'll see the same thing. 24.15 is the first future passive, and 24.19 is the second future passive. You just need to learn those. Again, a lot of that you've already learned. What you're adding in the first aorist passive and the second aorist passive is an augment and a little different tense formative, theta eta, for the first aorist passive, and then just the eta for the second aorist passive, as you'll see a little bit later. And then the same thing is true in the future, and we'll look at that just a little bit later. So do note the presence of the augment, because that indicates that we're talking about action in past time. Remember, the most important thing about Greek verbs is the aspect of the verb rather than the time of the action. So, but you still do see that time of action when you have the augment present in some of these tenses. Again, I emphasize the ease of recognition with the theta eta, the tense formative. Read carefully what he says about that, and then notice what he says about the stops. That's very very similar to what you have seen before. The presence of the theta eta at the end of the stem is going to change in some cases when the last word of the root is one of the stops that he talks about. pardon me. Also note the footnote, particularly footnote 4. There's some good information for you there. In the second aorist passive, beginning at 24:11, you have the construction of that verb is going to include the augment plus the changed stem plus the eta as the tense formative, not the theta eta, but the eta, and then the secondary passive endings that are going to be taking that are going to be put on the end of the word. So if you look at the paradigm, learn that paradigm, you will notice that it's relatively easy to recognize, but it also is something that you need to learn. And then you're going to move into the first future passive. You will notice the similarities. It also has theta eta in it, but it adds the sigma in the tense formative. You'll also notice another thing that helps you to distinguish it from the aorist passive is that there is no augment, and also that it uses the primary active ending. So you want to notice all of those. Look at these charts, add what you need to your notebook, and we're soon going to be getting to the point where you'll have all of these verb charts complete, and just keep up with them if you will. And then if you will notice, again, the paradigm 24:15, you need to learn that. He also talks about some differences between the future and passive and aorist passives, and that will help you to distinguish those if you will review those things there. You also need to read and note section 24:17, where he talks about deponent futures. And then the second future passive, there are not very many of those in the New Testament, but they are the second future, again, like the second aorist, has no theta in that tense formative. It's simply eta sigma, and so it becomes easy to recognize. And it also has a changed stem. Pardon me. The summary here is very helpful, so I really encourage you to pay close attention to that. If you'll notice, again, your master verb chart on page 218 is almost complete now. You got one more tense to add to that, so we want to be sure to keep noting that, keep up with it, and then at the end of the next chapter you'll have the complete chart, and you'll be able to put the whole thing in your notebook. Notice the vocabulary, if you will, not many words, but let's go through those very quickly if we can. First of all, ago. The second one is Haima, and then Hekastas, and then Himation, and then Haros, and then Hupago, and then Phobeomai, and the last of the vocabulary words is Cairo. So if you will note those, learn those well, and continue to read all of the remaining material that he puts in the back of the chapter. I would encourage you at least to read through it and find whatever help you can find there. So in chapter 24, you will have an exercise parsing, your warm-up exercise. Remember, if you feel the need to do that, do that. If you don't worry about it. You don't have to turn it in. Remember that. In your translation, in exercise 24, you will need to translate sentences 1 through 5 as is indicated in the assignment section of the syllabus. When we move into chapter 25, there are two bits of good news here. The first is this is the last of the tenses of the verb that you're going to be learning. He will mention the pluperfect in the advanced information in this chapter, but this is the perfect tense, and It is the last tense you'll have to learn. Then the other thing is, it is the easiest tense to recognize. To me, it seems to me that it's very easy. So let me point out the exegetical insight. He does a good job with that. The overview of the chapter is very helpful. If you will read that and note what he has to say. Again, please compare the perfect in English grammar and in Greek grammar, because there are some distinctions in the meaning of the perfect tense, in perfect concept uh, in English and in Greek. So read that very carefully. Notice how he would translate it. He would generally use the have helping verb, though there are some contexts in which, for instance, where the verb written, grapho, is used in the perfect, it is probably the best translation would be it is written, or which sounds like a present translation, or it stands written. The perfect tense has that concept the uh, of the action that took place in the past with the result of it continuing into the present. So as you move on into the perfect, he explains how that is made up with the reduplication. Notice the consonant reduplication or the vocalic reduplication. Be sure to note that, and then that it uses the primary endings. Now, that's a little confusing. You may want to look over to section 2512 when you get to this point, because there's a little better explanation of it there. Then be sure to learn these paradigms at 25.5 and 25.7, as well as you deal with both the perfect active and the perfect middle passive. They're very straightforward. Just follow what he has to say, and then read the information that he gives you on the reduplication for the perfect tense and how that is handled in various situations. He also gives you some very helpful information beginning at 25:15 on the middle voice, general information on the middle voice. So be sure to note that. It'll help, I think, to avoid some confusion later on. Your complete master verb chart is available at 25:22, and then a very, very good summary. I would encourage you to copy this summary and put it in your notebook. You only have 3 vocabulary words. Let's do those quickly. The first one is ateo, then malan, then martueo. Now again, I encourage you to look at the advanced information where he describes the pluperfect and just kind of get familiar with that. Very few of those in the New Testament. And then go through that exegesis section, because there are always some very helpful things there. But that should get you through this. Your exercise in chapter 25 is going to call for parsing and translating verses 1 through 5. And remember, this is the Wednesday assignment, so it's due on Wednesday night. All right, we'll see you in the next video then.